Are you a person who's been wanting to be a student missionary? Are you someone who wants to take apart a long period of your life and dedicate it somewhere else? Should you do it? Should you not? What is it all about? Well, today we're going to talk about that. Welcome to Tiny Chair Talks, where we have big conversations in tiny chairs. Today with us, I have a very special guest, Sonya Reaves. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
Good to see you. Yeah.
It's good to be here.
So tell us, what do you do?
Yeah, so at the moment, I have lots of different jobs. I am the short-term missions coordinator, global engagement is what it's called, at Southern Adventist University. I am also the children's ministry director at The Well, a church downtown Chattanooga. And I am in the process of finishing up my master's in international community development.
That's awesome. Love it. Well, thanks for being here once again. So tell us, what's the difference between being a student missionary and a short-term mission trip?
Sure. In the big term of these things, or in the big world of these terms, short-term missions is technically anything under 3 years. However, the way we use it, probably I would say throughout the Seventh-day Adventist Church, is short-term missions would be 2 weeks, maybe 3 months if you did a summer stint, or anything less. Then student missions would be a school year, and then being a missionary would be a career. So that would be a year plus.
Yeah, so when should a person know it's time to set apart a long period of their life to missions?
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that has to be something that God has called you to do, and that you feel that you have something to contribute outside of your culture or outside of your neighborhood long term.
Yeah, so you wouldn't say it's necessarily for someone who's in their 20s or someone who's in their 30s or 40s. It can be for anybody?
Being a missionary, career missionary long term, could be for anybody, sure. What's your calling in that, or do you feel that you have something to share or contribute? For being a student missionary, I think most everybody should be a student missionary.
Yeah.
I think that you can, there's a perfect opportunity to take what Europeans and Australians call your gap year after your first 2 years of college. So before you start your program, your junior and senior year, there's a perfect opportunity for a gap year, and I 100% recommend taking it. If I had 2 resumes, they were the exact same, except one has been a student missionary, I most likely will always hire the student missionary over the other one.
Yeah, so how can a person even prepare to set apart so much time of their life?
Whew. If you're going through the Adventist Volunteer Services, which is a part of the North American Division, they help walk you through it. However, I recommend going through your local Seventh-day Adventist University, wherever it may be. They have programs dedicated to helping prepare you. So you have a class that you take that talks about working internationally and cross-culturally. They have a class that prepares you to serve, maybe to be a teacher. They have class that will help connect you with other people who have been and served. And then once you're over there, they follow up with you, they check on you, they send you care packages. And then when you come back, they also help reintegrate you back into being a student after having been, for all intents and purposes, a regular adult.
Yeah, and how does it feel for a person to leave behind their normal?
Mm-hmm. It's hard because you miss out on things. Your friends' lives continue where yours pauses. And so when you come back, it's a bit of a shock sometimes because your friends have all these corporate memories that you're not a part of, and you have corporate memories that they're not a part of. But I would not let that deter you from going, because you will create your own group of people as well who know and understand what that feels like. And your friends, if they're really your friends, will keep you connected and will welcome you back and get you caught up.
Yeah,
so it's
that's
not
great.
A complete loss.
Yeah, and how about communication once you're there? Do people have the opportunity to still speak to their family members or friends back home?
Yeah, so look, my parents were missionaries in the 70s in Brazil. And I heard stories from them where it cost $3 a minute to talk on the phone. So they never talked to their family unless someone had died. And then they would tell me stories about their family using a cassette tape recorder to record Thanksgiving dinner. So they just pushed record and they recorded all the audio and then sent it to my parents. And that was how they communicated, which to me sounds so sad.
Yeah.
When I was a student missionary, just after the turn of the century, I had to send letters and email and hope that the email made it, because there's this big World Wide Web out there, and sometimes the emails would get lost.
Yeah.
It was the turn of the century. What did we know? However, now, it's no different than calling your family, like me calling my family back in Texas. You can use WhatsApp, you can send video messages, you can send text messages, you can send Instagram messages, you can send, I don't know, all the things.
Everything.
It's very, very easy. And honestly, the internet is better in a lot of developing countries. When I lived in Cambodia, I paid $5 a month and I never ran out of data.
Wow.
$5 a month.
I need that.
Yeah, first world problems, legit. How much are we paying?
Yeah. Well, that's great. I appreciate that there still is communication. You're not
So much
completely
communication.
isolated.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about what it was like for you to see your parents in that role? Did that interest you? Is that where it first started?
Yeah, you hit it spot on. I grew up seeing artifacts from Brazil, paintings on the wall, photo albums. We would sometimes on Friday night get the slides out and watch a slideshow of my parents in Brazil. And my parents both speak Portuguese. I don't, but I grew up hearing the sounds of it and always knew from an early on that my calling was to work internationally and my calling was to serve in that way. And so definitely from the very beginning of my birth. My name, Sonya, in Portuguese means to dream, Sonya.
Wow.
And so I've always had a cultural thirst, to learn other cultures and meet other people.
That's so cool. I love that. And how about learning a new language? Should a person know it before they show up, or what is that process like?
Yeah, I think it's always beneficial if you speak the language ahead of time, because obvious reasons, you can communicate first and faster and develop friendships. However, that should not be a deterrent from learning. What you need to do is you need to start learning as soon as possible, and then once you get to that country, that location, you should work as hard as you can to learn their language and to connect with the people. And it's hard, and it's going to be really embarrassing. I one time told students, I worked in Honduras as a student missionary, and I once told children to go wash their monkeys. Lavarse los monos versus lavarse las manos.
Yeah.
It's a simple mistake. Another time the children wanted to go to the bathroom, orinar. But I thought they were saying orar, which means to pray.
Yeah.
And so I was like, sure, kids, let's pray before your nap time. So you have to be willing to make mistakes and have a light heart about it and not take things personally when they laugh at you for saying silly things.
Yeah, that's really interesting, realizing that we're making mistakes, maybe during our time as a missionary.
Yeah.
What is that like? How should a missionary deal with maybe feeling like, I'm not doing a great job here?
Man, you ask such good questions. I really appreciate them. It's when you go as a student missionary, everything in your life goes from a normal, everything to being 1,000%. Everything is bigger, more intense feeling, and more vulnerable feeling. When we go and serve either here in America or overseas somewhere, we should always be serving with an open heart of, am I doing this right? Did I make a mistake? I'm sorry, forgive me. And if we go with that kind of a spirit, again, whether here in America or not, we're going to be doing so much better because we're going to be building those friendships. Because it feels good when a friend who has hurt you says, gosh, I'm so sorry I did that. I was wrong. And I've had to do it. It's embarrassing and it's humbling, but it's what God asks us to do, and to be willing to admit when we're wrong, kind of thing.
That's really good. I guess we have to be open-minded about our flaws and realize God can still use us during it.
And he wants to use you because he knows we're not perfect.
Yeah.
He knows that we have sinned and we have fallen short. But that's the beauty of all of this, because even though we have, he's redeemed us and he's called us to do better, and he's called us to still serve. And keeping that kind of an attitude, whether it's you've messed up on saying a word in a language, or whether you have insulted someone's culture or heritage or any of those things, if you're going with an open spirit to say, I'm learning, this is new and this is hard, can you help me? Then that'll change everything.
Yeah, so even though we're flawed and we go through this, we want to know that we did a good job. How do you determine success in a missionary?
Yeah, I do not think success necessarily looks like how many baptisms did I have or how many new church members do I have. That's what Jesus counts at the end of time. He will count that, and that's how he's going to measure success at the end. He's not asking me to count that way. He's saying, did you do what I asked you to do? Did you go and serve with an open heart? Did you go and make friends? Did you go and learn something? That's what you should count as success. You can't know otherwise what's in someone's heart. I don't know. So did I do my best? Did I do what he asked me to do? Then it was successful.
Wow. So now looking at it from the other side, how have we seen missions done poorly in the past?
How much time do we have?
Just a few more minutes. Now go for it.
Yeah. So the history of missions, I mean, going all the way back to King Richard the whatever doing the Crusades.
Okay.
Obviously that was bad. You can't do that. But even looking at the history of missions and how colonialism has played a part in it, we have to be aware, and that's part of, I think, our preparing to go on whether it's short-term missions or be a career missionary or student missionary, being aware of what is the history of colonialism in this location. I served for a year in Bere, Chad, which is in Central Africa. If you Africa, put a big X, that's Chad. And I worked at the local hospital there, the Bere Adventist Hospital. And in the 1970s, there were missionaries who went down there and they had good intentions. They loved Jesus. But the way they taught God to these people was that in order to worship, you have to wear a tie and a button-up shirt. Now, this is Chad, which is rated one of the lowest countries, poverty, development, everything. Nobody wears a tie anywhere. There wasn't even electricity. I lived in a hut with no running water. Why would they have a tie? And yet this church felt that the only way they could worship God was to wear a button-up shirt and a tie for the men. That's colonialism. That's neo-colonialism. And we have to understand that that's some of the damage we've done. So we've broken trust. If you look at the native populations of Australia, America, Canada, we have broken trust through missions by trying to make them into who I am. And that's not what God asks us to do. If he'd wanted us all to be the same, he wouldn't have created the world different. There's different foods in different locations. The world is created by God to be different, which means we're going to worship differently. And it's being aware of those differences and accepting that and seeing what God could look like in this community or what he does, and allowing people to be who they are in their culture without changing them.
Yeah, that's really powerful and something really to consider when we go and serve. So how do relationships find healing? For example, you've mentioned where damage has been done in the past. How can we move forward and help instead of hurt?
Yeah. So when we go and serve, again, whether in America or outside of America, when we go and serve, we have to have that openness to go to a location and say, teach me, I'm here to learn from you. Yes, I have things to contribute and share, but what can I learn from you? Working in your local church, again, overseas or here, what does God look like in that community? And building a friendship. So let's say, going back to Chad, Africa, where they feel they have to wear the ties, going and saying, and becoming friends with them. What does God look like here to you? How do you see it? And supporting them in their exploration of what Jesus can look like. As you make new friends in that community, helping them to find what Jesus looks like. And it's just a lot of listening. And that's what we should be doing here in America, 110%. We should be asking questions and then listening to the answers before we reply.
Yeah, it's all about the dialogue. That's good. And tell us about how you decided to be a missionary.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to be a student missionary since I was maybe in high school, because I'd heard stories of other student missionaries coming back and how they were able to help and serve and learn languages and things like that because of my parents' experience in Brazil. So I always knew. And I remember I was a student at Southern Adventist University, and it was the Student Missions Expo. So all the booths were out for recruiting to go to their different locations. And I had been deciding between going through Adventist colleges abroad to study a language in Spain, to study Spanish, or whether to be a student missionary. And I remember praying in my head, and I was just like, God, what do you want from me to do? And strongly feeling, go be a student missionary next year. Like the closest I have ever felt to hearing his voice saying, go. And so I went straight up to the director, and I was like, here I am, Lord, send me. And I went as a student missionary to Honduras when I was 20. And if anything, it just convicted me that I was on the right path for my career and my calling, and knew that God wanted me to work overseas and do things.
Was there a moment that you wanted to quit? Did you ever say, I need to go home?
Yes. Man, it's hard. And we all know that. Being a human is hard, first of all, acknowledge that. But it's hard being outside your comfort zone. Man, especially in Honduras when I was 20, I was learning how to be an adult, how to negotiate difficulties. I wanted to quit a couple times for sure, especially when it came down to the language. But I really wanted to quit when I was a student missionary in Chad at that hospital. Honestly, there was a night where things were not going well, and I didn't feel useful. I didn't feel like I was making a difference. And I embarrassingly went back to the house that we visited, and I crawled under the bed and I cried because I felt useless. But my friend, who was also serving alongside me, she found me and she said, those are not God's thoughts. That is not what God is telling you. God has called you because you're here. You have a purpose. It's going to be hard, but we're called. So yeah, I definitely wanted to go home a lot.
Yeah.
For sure. But how often as an adult do I want to go home? All the time.
Yeah.
So it's a learning process.
Okay. Yeah, and I love that you said there was a friend there with you. When someone goes as a missionary, should they go with others?
Yes. So this is obviously my personal opinion. There's a reason in the Bible Jesus sent the disciples out 2 by 2. Because the verse in the Bible that says a two together are good, but a 3 braided cord thing is extra strong. It's that same thing. You need someone to help lift you up, to help you out, to connect with and to bond with, and to be like, that is not God's voice. Like, come to the light, because you take turns doing that. And also it helps to have a collective memory together. The people who I served alongside throughout all of my locations that I've served, I have close relationships with them, and we know that we could call each other at any time and we would be there for each other in a moment's notice.
And what does God do for you while a missionary?
He works on your heart and he humbles you. For me, it's been different things that I have learned in different locations. When I was in Chad, it was God, as he said to Hosea, he took her out into the wilderness to teach him to love her, teach them to love him again. And I felt like that's what he did. He took me into this wilderness, literal desert, Sahara, Sub-Sahara, and taught me what he looked like again and how to cut everything else out of my life and see who he was. Or he's taught me how to rely on him for survival and like sanity, or how to celebrate with him because things are exciting and he has created some amazing things. So it's different things that he has taught me, but I've been out and served a lot.
Yeah. So when you are a missionary, there's more impact than just the work that you're doing, but there's spiritual growth as well.
Yes, for sure. And for me, I think sometimes it's almost easier to have spiritual growth when I'm outside of America because I'm out of my element. Nothing is easy. I'm constantly reminded of my inadequacies or my unknown. And so that's been a struggle for me coming back from serving overseas most recently, because it's been harder to develop a relationship with God because it's easy to get in the everyday easiness of life, whereas it's an everyday challenge sometimes living overseas.
Yeah, and what are some of the positive motives and positive goals a person can have, and what are some of the negative ones a person could have as a missionary?
Like, I want to do harm kind of negative goals, or unintentional negative goals?
Yeah, maybe unintentional.
Yeah, there's a lot of unintentional things that happen, going back to the concept of colonialism. That would be me going to a location and saying, I know what you need because I'm an American and I'm educated. That is the worst thing anybody could ever do. We should never go anywhere and say, I know what you need, let me help you.
Yeah.
Ever. That should never happen. We should be going to a place and saying, what do you need? How can I help you? Or going and saying, show me what life looks like here. And then after you've built those relationships and that trust, saying, hey, maybe this would help. Or could I help you with this area? I see you're doing this. Because I'm not an expert on someone else's community. They're the expert. It's rude of us to assume that they have no one who is an expert on making things better. Being someone who wants to help make a change is not unique to America.
Yeah.
Every community has this. And when we go and serve, we should look for those people. Mr. Rogers, my favorite,
Yes.
says, look for the helpers. That's not unique to America. Don't just look for the American helpers or the European helpers. Look for the local helpers who are doing things in their community. Look at the local newspapers. Who are the people who are writing about change or writing about support coming into the community, or who are the churches that are helping their community and that are actively representing God? And that's who we should be looking at and working alongside. Doing that versus, I know what you need because I'm an American.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that's the worst.
That's right. And how about for someone who has all the right intentions and motives, but they're just like, I need to graduate on time, or I can't sit apart a whole year of my life because I have a goal, I have a plan. What do you say to that person?
Oof. I would say, and I have said, do you not need to? Like, why? Why do you need to finish school so fast? Is it because you want to start making money? Let's think about that then. Why do you think you need to start making money? Or is it your parents want you to finish straight away? I love you, parents, but there's such good things that can happen from being a student missionary. So I would encourage a student who wants to be a student missionary, to push back maybe, or who's contemplating it, push back a little bit on why you think you can't. Or maybe you should go after you graduate. I went during college and then I went again after I graduated. You can go as a student missionary then, which is just as good, especially maybe you're studying nursing and you'll have your skill set finished and you can go and do more things than you could if you'd gone earlier. So push back and examine why you don't want to go. Are you afraid? Then acknowledge it. Are you concerned about finances? Acknowledge it. Are you concerned about what others would think? Are you concerned that you're going to miss out on something? Are you concerned that your boyfriend or girlfriend won't stick around for a year?
Yeah.
Let's compare these and understand big picture. I understand when you're in college, I was there, that your world is just college. But it's a big, long lifetime we have. It's not going to be finished in just when we're in college. So take a risk and look at the big picture.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you don't go as a student missionary. Who am I to say what God has planned for you? But I think you should be a student missionary.
Yeah, for sure. So it's not about the things I can't do. It's about the things that I will be able to do and can do.
Yeah, we all can contribute like, we might not be a medical doctor and we might not be finished in our degree, but we can come alongside and support. When I was in Honduras, I wasn't necessarily in charge of anything grand. I came and I just provided extra support at a daycare that I worked at for underprivileged kids. I wasn't the director of the orphanage or the home or the things. I just supported what happened. And so knowing that you're going along to support, when I came back and was a student, I had a bigger desire to learn stuff, because as I was in my social work classes, I was like, wait, what we're talking about right here was exactly what happened with the kids over here. So it was more applicable in that sense. You can also look at it as an internship. You're going to learn and experience and develop skills that you need in life.
Yeah, so you talked about when you came back and then you were in your classes and you saw connections there. What is it like for a missionary once they come back home?
When you come back home, it's different for everyone. Obviously, we're all human, we're all different. But it can be a variety of things. It could be really hard to have left your location, and you could be in a bit of a depression because you've come back and you were in that country, you were doing something real tangible. You were impacting lives, and now you've come back to feeling very narcissistic because school is all about me, which is okay, it's school, it's supposed to be. But that contrast can be really hard to balance sometimes. Or it might be that you're like, thank you, God, that I'm no longer in this difficult situation because it was a challenge. And coming back can be a relief. Or it could be that you went through hard things and you need to mourn and process and come to terms with your grief that what has happened. So it's a wide variety of things that are all acceptable. All of them are okay. And it's okay to seek counseling help when you come back. That's what counselors are for. They're here to help process things. And oftentimes you are having a cross-cultural experience. You have to process it and you need someone to help guide you. I myself, when I have come back, have gone through counseling because I needed a guide. I didn't know how to process not being in my country anymore, or my adopted country. So yeah, seek help.
And there's no stigma behind that, I mean.
No way. Yeah. Thank goodness that God created counselors, because I need one. I need help.
That's right.
It's okay to need help.
I've used it too. That's right. Yeah. And what is it like for the community once the missionary has left there?
I've often wondered this a lot. I lived in Cambodia and worked at an organization where we had a lot of gap year kids. So they were coming from Australia, so they were actual gap year kids. And when they left, I was sad. I'm not obviously a local Cambodian, but I myself was sad because my friends were gone. I was excited for them because they were going back home to pursue their careers, to take what they'd learned in Cambodia and apply it to their lives. And so there is a bit of a loss felt, but there's also an understanding that this is the culture of these roles. So we've got islands in the Marshall Islands, the Guam, all of those, they're mostly run by student missionaries, the schools, not the islands, sorry. The Adventist schools on those islands are run by the teachers who come as student missionaries. So you have a lot of turnover, and that is hard on the local community, but you have to find that balance in that. And yeah, it's awful and it's hard, but there's pros and cons, and that's why I think it's good to have student missionaries come alongside long-term missionaries, or work at an organization that is ongoing and can continue to support and offer that kind of help. Yeah,
it's necessary to be strategic in that time.
Yes, strategic. Very good terminology on that, because we shouldn't just willy-nilly rock up and be like, I'm a missionary, I'm going to do some things, and then like peace out, because then that leaves a hole in the community, and we don't want to leave holes. We want to support. So, yeah.
And that's the overall goal. Yeah, so to conclude, what would you say God is telling us in regards to serving, in regards to being a missionary?
Yeah, God is calling all of us to serve in some capacity. It doesn't have to be overseas. It doesn't have to be for a career service missionary kind of thing, but He's calling us to serve. He's calling us to connect cross-culturally. He's calling us to listen and to develop relationships and he's calling us to live the life that he did, which was as a missionary through friendship evangelism or going to the Samaritan community and connecting that way. So really, we should all be doing something to serve and to talk about him.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Sonya, for your
you're
wisdom
welcome.
and for your experience and sharing it with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And so we'll tell you, if you're thinking about being a missionary, go for it. There's going to be challenges, but go for it because God is calling you to it. We thank you so much for joining Tiny Chair Talks, where we have big conversations in tiny chairs. We'll see you next time. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for joining. We want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone else. Also, if you want to see some more content, check out either one of these two videos.